In a glamorous city of Triangular Island, the home of the super rich was not short of bustling activities. Living in this city was the dream of every man and woman. The city offered lots of amusement, entertainment, and luxuries. But one defining attribute of Triangular Island was that marriages were broken down on a daily basis. This simply informed doubters that wealth and affluence may not necessarily buy happiness. Many couples living in Triangular Island cheated and lied, and there were women standing by to snatch one's husband. It was a sin city of relationships where faithful wives fought unfaithful husbands, stubborn side chicks, and mothers-in-law. Weekends in Triangular Island was haven, beehive of activities showcasing Utopian world and glamorous events. Most mothers also trade marriages with their friends. Your son will marry my daughter. Your daughter will marry my son were the popular mantra on the lips of most mothers of Triangular Island. Mrs Dabo, a mother to one of the wealthiest men in Triangular Island, had made such an arrangement for her son Daniel to marry her rich friend's daughter Doran. But love, they say, is blind. Mr. Daniel instead opted to marry one of his staff, Mara, who was from a poor background but focused on developing herself and living within her circle of friends who were not super rich. So when Mr. Daniel approached her, she was skeptical and yet couldn't resist the urge of marrying one of the most eligible bachelors living in the Triangular City. Even though Mrs. Dabo opposed the marriage between Mara and her only son, she couldn't stop the powerful fragrance of love between the two. Mr. Daniel was the owner of Port Bank. His wealth were in surplus. I mean, he was one of the richest men of the Triangular Island, an estate where the super rich resided. His wealth attracted many persons to him. Just like a honeycomb, beautiful women were queuing up to have a taste of him. When he met Mara, she was at that time working at Mr. Daniel's Port Bank. She was not one of those who could be swayed by wealth. She was a professional to the core, and that attracted Mr. Daniel to her. Their marriage was the talk of the Triangular Island. The who attended, women envied Mara. From that day, they were bent to ruin her marriage. Many tried different tricks and never succeeded because Mara understood the heart of the man she married. After 9 months into their marriage, she became pregnant and gave birth to their first child, a baby girl named Danielle, and soon another pregnant, this time around twin boys who were delivered through cesarean operation. The pregnancy nearly took her life as there were complications during labor before the doctors decided to go for the CS. After all the cuts and incisions on Mara's stomach, the one-time slim beauty began to lose her beauty and her one-time flat stomach began to sag. Mr. Daniel and Mara had been married for 15 years. Their union had started with promises of love and commitment, a love that deepened with the birth of their 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Mara devoted her life to raising the children, maintaining the home, and ensuring Mr. Daniel's comfort. Mr. Daniel had stopped her dreams of working or building a career. He always insisted, "A wife's place is in the home. I make enough for us. Look at our riches." Mara loved making money that she could call hers. She regretted that financial independence wasn't part of her discussion with Mr. Daniel before agreeing to marry him. It was difficult for Mara to just sit and receive money from her husband while doing next to nothing to earn it. She simply was not that type of woman, but she has to endure, having understood the porous nature of marriages at Triangular City. Once any gap in your marriage is noticed, many women would take over your home. some coming to advise you, while they also make their own plans of taking over your man. One morning, Mr. Daniel looked at Mara and felt disappointed. He no longer saw the slim beauty with flat stomach that he married 15 years ago. Childbirth and staying at home most times had increased her size. As such, the connection between her and her husband became somewhat distanced. This was the perfect time for those jealousy women to pounce. Mrs. Dabo, Daniel's mother, who had earlier opposed Daniel's marriage to Mara because Mara was from a poor family and also from another tribe. She had wanted her only son to marry a lady named Doran, her friend's daughter. Sensing the distance between Daniel and Mara, Mrs. Dabo stepped in cunningly. First, she went to a witch doctor to prepare a concoction of love potion that would make it possible for Daniel to pay more attention to loving Doran. As the years passed, Mr. Daniel grew increasingly distant. He began accusing Mara of being lazy, claiming she was growing fat and unattractive. "Look at you," he said one evening, his tone filled with disdain. "You've let yourself go. All you do is sit around while I work hard to provide for this family." His words pierced Mara's heart, but she swallowed her pain, determined not to let it show for the sake of her children. Daniel's mother fueled the growing rift. "Mara is no longer vibrant," she told her son one evening. "You need a younger woman who can take care of you properly and give you more children. It's what any sensible man would do." Mr. Daniel, already dissatisfied and blinded by pride, took her words to heart. He announced his decision to take a second wife. Mara pleaded with him, her voice shaking. "Daniel, my lion, I have been by your side through everything. Please don't do this." But Mr. Daniel's mind was made up. Mr. Daniel married Doran, a younger, stunning woman who captivated him with her charm. He believed her youthful energy would bring him happiness. Shortly after the wedding, he and Doran embarked on an extravagant honeymoon, visiting scenic places, shopping at luxurious malls, and dining at the finest eateries. Meanwhile, Mara stayed behind, caring for their children and tending to the home. Each day that passed, Mara felt the weight of her heartbreak grow heavier. She prayed silently, her tears falling in the solitude of night, hoping for strength to endure the humiliation and pain. Life in the household changed drastically. Doran showed no interest in the children or the home and treated Mr. Daniel with indifference unless it involved money. She spent lavishly, draining Mr. Daniel's finances. Mara continued to shoulder the family's responsibilities, her quiet dignity contrasting with the chaos Doran brought. Mara's mother wanted her to come back, but Mr. Daniel insisted that if she must go, she would go alone without any of their children. It was Mara's friend, Ms. Nora, that encouraged her not to leave her husband for the enemy within. She told her that every problem has an expiring date, and what she was passing through wasn't an exception that patient would do the magic. Mr. Daniel stopped taking care of Mara and their children after he married Doran. His focus shifted to Doran. Struggling to cope, Mara decided to start an online remote job. With her training as a data analyst, to her surprise, the job paid her a huge amount of money every month, allowing her to provide for her children and regain her independence. She also started some body exercises to see if she could shed weight and become attractive to her husband once more. As she was succeeding in her quest, the more Daniel created a vacuum in her life. Her only consolation was her children and her childhood friend, Nora, who had advised her not to leave her husband. One evening, after a meal prepared by Doran, Mr. Daniel clutched his chest and collapsed. "Something is wrong," he gasped, his face pale and drenched in sweat. Mara rushed to his side, calling for help. "My Daniel, please stay with me," she cried. Doran stood by, unmoved. "He's exaggerating," she muttered coldly. Ignoring Doran, Mara called in an ambulance and took Mr. Daniel to the hospital. She sat beside his bed all night, praying fervently. By morning, Mr. Daniel's condition had stabilized. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Mara, her eyes red from crying, her hands clutching his. "You saved me," he whispered weakly. Mara simply nodded, her exhaustion too deep for words. While Mara was at the hospital, Doran was at home searching for Mr. Daniel's bank details and property documents. Before poisoning Mr. Daniel, she had ensured he wrote a will, giving her the most valuable parts of his property. As Mr. Daniel recovered, he noticed Doran's indifference. Suspicious, he investigated and uncovered the truth. Doran had been poisoning him slowly, hoping to eliminate him and inherit his wealth. Furious, Mr. Daniel contacted the police. Officers arrived and arrested Doran, her crimes laid bare for all to see. As Mr. Daniel processed the betrayal, guilt consumed him. "I was blind," he confessed to Mara, tears streaming down his face. "You've always been there for me, and I treated you so cruelly. Can you ever forgive me?" Mara's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. "Forgiveness isn't easy, my Daniel, my lion. But for the sake of our children and the love we once shared, I will try. But you must change." Daniel's mother, witnessing the fallout of her advice, was overcome with regret. Now ashamed, she visited Mara, her head bowed in shame. "My daughter," she began, her voice heavy with emotion, "I was wrong. I let my pride and selfishness blind me to your worth. Please forgive me." Mara looked at her mother-in-law, tears streaming down her face. "Mother, I forgive you. But let's work together to heal this family." The two women embraced, a moment of unity and hope. Determined to make amends, Mr. Daniel worked tirelessly to rebuild their relationship. He apologized to their children, acknowledging how his actions had hurt them. He encouraged Mara to pursue her dreams. Unknown to him, Mara's online job was paying her 10 times higher than what his company Port Bank was paying her when she was working there. Mara had a deal with husband that she was never going to be a housewife again. Daniel was happy. He opened a big data center, Mara Data Center, for her, and soon she became an employer of labor, training other women on how to succeed and become independent. Their home transformed into a haven of peace and love once again. Mr. Daniel learned that true beauty lies in loyalty, sacrifice, and the unwavering strength of a partner who stands by you through life storms. Together, they moved forward, cherishing the family they had rebuilt with love and understanding. Do not let people define your happiness. Live in harmony. Please subscribe to this channel, click the like button, and share this story. Thank you for watching.